my fellow Americans, to my friends, and especially to my enemies, I have a message for all of you specifically. You are losing and we are winning. Make no mistake, the tide has turned. For years, they told us our cause was hopeless. They told us that borders were just imaginary lines on a map, that crime was the new normal, and that America must bleed its sons and daughters in forever wars all around the world with no end. But today, we stand here with proof in our hands that they were wrong and we were right. Look at our nation's capital, where we are right now. Washington, D.C., once a lawless symbol of decay, has now changed, seemingly overnight. Washington, D.C., as we stand here now, is now the safest city in the United States of America. And how? How did we do this? Because we had the courage to bring the tools at our disposal. We brought in the National Guard. We enforced the law. We gave police the resources that they needed. We said enough was enough. And Washington, D.C. has now gone from a punchline to a model that we will replicate around the country. That is victory. And we know who showed us the way. President Donald J. Trump, the man who stood up and said, America first is not a slogan, it is a mission. And special thanks as well to President Nayib Bukele of El Salvador, because you proved that when you fight crime with courage, when you take your nation back from the gangs, safety and order can be restored. These men gave us a blueprint, and it is our job now to carry it forward. And that fight, my friends, is not just here at home. Because for decades, our military strategy was wasted in forever wars, in deserts halfway around the world, chasing ghosts, while our own communities suffered and decayed. But the sea change is here, because we are done dying in wars that never end. Instead, we are bringing the fight to where it belongs, against the cartels that are poisoning our children, that are killing our families, these criminal networks that have been waging direct war on our people every single day. Ladies and gentlemen, the military strikes on the cartels have begun. And let me tell you something, the only thing that I want for Christmas this year is more cartel strikes. Folks, this is what it means to fight for America, and this is what it means to win. But I want to shift gears a little bit, because I want to tell you about something that the globalists never want you to question. And this is a fantasy that has been pushed for years in this country, particularly since the post-war era. And this fantasy is something called the blank slate. Now, what do I mean about the blank slate? Well, blank slaters believe that people all around the world are interchangeable cogs. They say that anyone from anywhere can be dropped in America, and then poof, overnight, they're a red-blooded American. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not reality. That is reality. Go look at the propaganda. It's everywhere. And it's very simple. But we can see when a great city like New York, our greatest city, is on the precipice of being run by a Zoran Mamdani, I think we realize that something has gone absolutely wrong and something has to give. Because as I stand here today, we are less than 10 years away from one of America's great cities being run by a Muhammad. We know it's coming, we can call it out, and it is time to say enough is enough, something has to give. These people are not American, they do not want to be American, they do not want to assimilate, and they are not interested in assimilation. And I say, if they don't want to be part of this country, they can go home. Look around the world. Look around the world. Korea is Korean. Saudi Arabia is Saudi. Africa is African. I personally moved to China myself. I lived there for 2 years. I learned to speak Mandarin Chinese. 打倒共产党，打倒共产党。我跟你说，我真的会讲中文的，就是的。But take a look at me, folks. I'm not Chinese. I'm just not. I'm never going to be Chinese. It is a fantasy. And if I ran around telling you that I was Chinese, you would call me a lunatic, and you would be right. You see, when it comes to gender fluidity, the right seems to get this right and understands it, but at the same time, many seem to support this idea of nation and national fluidity. This is based on a discredited fantasy of the blank slate. Nations survive because they defend their identity. They don't pretend that they are blank slates. And this is serious, because what happens when we open the floodgates to mass migration? Do we get one united America? No. We get a fractured America, and that's the situation that we've been in for a long time. We get mini nations growing inside our own borders, little Bangladeshes, little Kabuls, little Mogadishus. Do these mass migrants suddenly erase centuries of culture? Do they erase their old loyalties? Do they bring those loyalties? No, they bring the loyalties with them, they bring the conflicts with them as well, and then we're told that we have to celebrate it even when it divides us. Well, I will tell you something. Diversity is not our strength. Unity is our strength. And this is a huge problem, because we live in a time and age where technology plays a huge role here. Because of this technology, you have the ability for these nations to essentially still live in their home nation. They present themselves as still being members of their home nation. They say this in their own words. Go listen to Omar Fatah up there in Minneapolis. Go listen to some of the things that these people say. They refer to Somalia as their homeland. And I say, when they tell you what they believe, you should listen. It's really simple. We don't want entire towns where the American flag has been replaced by a foreign one. If you want to wave another flag, then you are free to do so on the flight back home. And if you want to burn our flag, you can take a trip to jail. The truth is, it's simple. Some people can assimilate, but many are not interested to. That's not bigotry, that's reality. And pretending otherwise is destroying our nation. The blank slate is dead. Nations are not interchangeable. People are not interchangeable. And America is not just dirt that you stand on and trod beneath your feet. A nation is a culture, a history, our faith, our tradition, and our people. So this is what I say. No more lies, no more blank slate, no more mass migration that turns America into someone else's homeland. Because what happens if we lose that? Well, if we lose that, then you lose the soul of America. And if you lose the soul of America, then there is no America left to save. And I promise you this, we will never, ever let that happen. Every year, we see millions upon millions of people coming into our country on these temporary visas, worker visas, student visas, tourist visas, and every year they break their word. They commit fraud, they commit scams, they commit schemes. They break our laws and they don't go home. That is not immigration. That is invasion. That is invasion and infiltration. And we're going to tell you who is behind it, because we're going to name names of the biggest violators of our immigration laws. The three biggest are China, India, and Mexico. China sends in waves of these so-called students every single year. Many are tied directly back to the Chinese Communist Party. And you can just open the newspaper or Human Events and the Post-Millennial. I see their editor-in-chief right here in the front row. And you can see stories every single day of the theft of American research, in many cases national security research, in many cases government-funded, U.S. government-funded research that is stolen and sent back to the Chinese Communist Party. Then we also see these cases where they overstay, they steal our technology, and they treat America like a buffet line. In fact, the Chinese national just recently stole the entire source code of XAI, and I believe handed it over to OpenAI. Then you have India. India milks the H-1B system dry, replacing American workers in our own tech companies, undercutting wages, and they're laughing all the way to the bank. That's why President Trump is coming in with the tariffs now, and people got really mad when I said this online, but ladies and gentlemen, we gotta end the scam calls, and I think a great way to do that would be tariff every single one of these call centers. We know they're going on overseas. We know exactly where they're coming from. We know how to do this. They say, oh, Jack, you can't do that. That's not a service. Okay, midwits, with the word thinking. Let's just stop for a second and understand. The United States Constitution authorizes the government to impose duties and imports on any foreign commerce. So guess what? There's nothing in the Constitution that says we can't, and in fact, we are going to. And Mexico, right? And Mexico. 90% of these seasonal visas, the work visas, go to Mexico. And every time, thousands upon thousands of these workers don't ever return. A temporary visa turns into a permanent stay. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not guest work, that's permanent trespass, that is invasion. So I say, you know what? No more. If you cannot abide by our rules, if you cannot follow the laws that have been written down, and if you do not understand that the ability to come to the United States is not a right, it is a privilege, then you lose the privilege because you have broken our rules. So no more endless visas for China, no more endless visas for India, and no more endless visas for Mexico. America is not a revolving door, it is a sovereign nation. It's really simple. I mean, I'm a dad. I say the same thing to my kids. If you abuse the privileges, you lose them. It's really that simple, ladies and gentlemen. And so if these countries continue to refuse the rules, the answer is simple. We're going to stop. Stop issuing these visas for China. Stop issuing visas for India, and stop issuing visas for Mexico. If you can't obey the rules, then you will lose the privilege. It is simple as that. From now on, folks, we will put American workers first. We will put American families first, and we will put the American nation first. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless you all here at the National Conservatism Conference. God bless America, and God bless the American people. Thank you very much.